Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our brothers, and it is quite a sad story. The message that he sent to me reads like this: Hello, Brother Nash, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? My brother, I want to confess to you the things that I did, but let me tell you everything that happened in the past. For me to be here where I am, it is because of the circumstances and the situations. When I was still back home in Zim, in that same village where I grew up in, that is the same village where I met my own wife, who was like the most beautiful woman in the whole village. My parents were both poor, and I was poor as well. And in the village from where I come from, that is where most of the gold that can be found in Zim, it is found just close to this other mountain that is very close to our village. So there are a lot of men that usually come and stay at our village. So there is a lot of money that is always flying around. You know, this is what happens in the mining towns. So being married to a woman who was this beautiful, it proved to be very difficult when you are poor and broke, and at the same time when you are married to a woman that is very beautiful, it is quite a challenging thing. But anyway, we were in love. She promised me that she was going to love me and only me. She then started working for these other men who actually buy the gold from your illegal gold miners. Then a lot of guys who comes from neighboring countries, when they come to buy this gold, they just come and stay at his place. So this man, he has a lot of money, and I agreed when my wife said that she had been offered a job by that man. She was working for that man, selling the stuff in the tuck shop, but rumors started to go around that she was sleeping with her boss. I confronted her and she denied it. Then there was this other time when she came back home very late. The moment that she walked in, I asked her what was she doing so late at night, not being at home. She said that her boss had told her to do a stock taking, so she had been counting the stock. Later on in the evening, I pretended as if I was not angry with her. I wanted a chance to see for myself if she was indeed sleeping with her boss. I tried to sleep with her on that night. She complained and she said that she was too tired. The more that I pressed her, the more that she refused, until she got out of bed. She took one of her jean trousers. She wore her jean trousers and she went to bed and she slept. I then took her phone, and when I opened her phone, I saw that her boss had texted her. This was like very late at night. Her boss had said, "Sweet dreams, I am thinking about you." So I confronted my wife, and she said that indeed she was dating her boss, but they had not yet started sleeping together. I went with this issue to the village headman. We then went to the chief, and that man, he was made to pay me with 5 cows for flirting with my wife. My parents had told me to divorce my wife, and they told me that it was far much better for me to sell this cattle that I had been given by that man, since he had been flirting with my wife. But I loved my wife a lot, and I said, I am going to keep my wife. But my father then said, since you say that you love your wife, we cannot force you to divorce your wife. But how about you go to any other country so that this man and your wife, they won't see each other at all the times, because if they slept together, one day they are going to sleep together again. So at least take her somewhere that is far. That was when I spoke with one of my friends who had been in South Africa like for a very long time, but I could see that even though like he was in South Africa, but he was not earning a lot of money. His life was just stuck. His parents were also suffering back home in Zim, but I spoke with him anyway, and he negotiated with this other man who was a truck driver who was going to bring us over to South Africa. That is how I ended up being in South Africa. I thought that the situation was going to change, but my wife, when we came here to South Africa, I don't know what actually happened to her. She became like a wild animal. There was this time that I had gone to work in the RDPs So we went there for about 2 months, and I could not return back home because I didn't have any money. In the RDPs, you only get paid after the whole structure, the whole house have been built and painted. That is when you will be paid, and you don't get paid like a lot of money. At that time, when I returned back to the location where me and my wife were staying, I found out that my wife was not at home. She came back the next morning, and I could smell alcohol on her. I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she had been invited to this other braai. I wanted to cry, brother, but I just held my tears back, and I said, so this is what it is. She asked for forgiveness, and she told me that she was never going to do it. And this was the reason as to why I did not return back to the RDP, because I was scared that my wife, she was going to become like a party animal. So I started surviving on piece jobs and doing those irregular jobs, and I was not getting paid a lot of money. My wife, she had a stable income. She was working for this other family as a maid, and at that place where she was working, people started to gossip about her until this gossip reached my own ears that my wife, she was cheating on me with this other rich guy. And when I confronted her, that was when I saw her true colors. She told me that she didn't care about me anymore. Any decision that I was going to make, she did not care about me anymore. My wife cheated on me, and she left me homeless. So I left that location where I was staying. I was homeless, and there was this other guy that I had once met when we had gone to play football in the farms. I told him about my situation, and I asked him if his boss wanted anyone, if this boss was hiring. The guy said, if you are staying on his farm, maybe if I speak with him, he can actually offer you a job. So this was a potato. So at that farm, they were cultivating potatoes. I went there and I started staying with that guy, and he spoke with his boss. I was hired, and whilst I was working on that farm, that was when I met this South African woman, a single mom, and she had 3 kids. And she invited me to her place, to her mom's place one day, and we slept at her mom's place. So she kept on complaining, and she was saying that this distance that you take each and every time when you are coming to visit me, it does not make me to feel very comfortable, because I used to walk for about 1 hour 30 minutes walking from the farms going to the village where she was staying. So she said, let me speak with my mom and let's hear if she is going to allow us so that we can build our own small mukuku, a back room at the back of her mom's house. And after her mom had agreed, we then built our own mukuku, and we started staying in that one-roomed house at the back of her mom's house. Whilst we were staying there, my brother, that was when I met this other Sangoma. So this Sangoma, he became sort of like a good friend to me, because I would go at his place, since in that village there were a lot of troubles when it came to water. You had to travel for a very long distance, about 20 minutes, just fetching water from this other pipe that went to the traditional leader's house, like to the chief's house. So there was a pipe that went through the village. So a lot of people, they had made holes in that pipe, on that big pipe. Then that is where we used to collect this water, since there was no running water around that village. So that Sangoma, I became good friends with him, because I would go and collect the water for him, then he would pay me. One day when I spoke with him, he told me that he was willing, because of my hard work, to give me a lot of riches. He said that, I want to give you a bottle of wealth. And when he had given me this bottle, this so-called bottle of wealth, that was going to make me to become a very rich man, when I looked at it, I saw that there was a worm inside. And this worm, my brother, he told me that I was supposed to feed this worm, and he told me that I was supposed to look for this other plant that looks like an onion, but I had never seen that plant before. One day he came to the farms with his big car, and we started going around looking for an onion, looking for that plant that looks like an onion, until we had found one. He made me to dig it up, and after I had digged it up, we then returned back to the village. And he told me that I was supposed to keep it in a safe place, and my wife, my girlfriend, was not supposed to see this onion like plant. I had to keep it in an area where it was always dark. So I wrapped it and I placed it in my toolbox, because I had a bicycle. So I had my toolbox, and I knew that this girlfriend of mine, she didn't like getting her hands dirty, and she was someone who was very disorganized, and I knew that I was going to take advantage of that. This plant, as long as it was still fresh, I could not get wealthy. This is what the traditional healer told me. Until it got dry, I had to feed this worm, that I had been given, which was inside that bottle. I was also keeping it in that same room that I was staying with my girlfriend for 3 months, my brother. 3 times over, when my girlfriend was on her period. Since she was someone who was really disorganized, when she was on her period, I was the one who would find myself picking up her always sanitary pads, because she will just remove them, place them in a plastic, in a small, those small plastics where they package the bread, like the Sasco bread. That is where she will put her sanitary pads. Then if I didn't pick them up, she will just leave them there. So I knew that I had the advantage over her, simply because she was disorganized. Whenever she was on her period, I will pick up a sanitary pad, pretend as if I had thrown it away at this other dustbin which we had dug up, and when it will be full, we will burn everything, and I will just pretend as if I had thrown away a used sanitary pad. But when I was alone, what I will do is that I will take that used sanitary pad that had the blood in it, then I will just soak it in water just a little bit, then I'll start to feed that worm with that used sanitary pad. Sometimes I will even cut it into smaller pieces, then I will just throw those small pieces that contained a period blood into that bottle that had the worm that was going to give me the wealth that I so deserved, according to that traditional healer. This plant dried. This was 3 months later, and after that I was told to bring it to that same Sangoma. I was then told that we had to do the next step. And the next step, my brother, it was really nasty. I even thought of letting it go, but that Sangoma said if I was going to let it go, if I was not going to go ahead the next step, I was going to run mad, to lose my mind. All that I had to do each and every morning for 3 days, my brother, this was like my hell on earth. I was told that when I would wake up in the morning, I had to go into the toilet and I had to force myself to pee each and every morning. So since in that village they were using those pitland, since in that village they were using those pit toilets, what I'll do is that I will take a newspaper, and then instead of pouring straight into that pit toilet, I will actually squat, then I will poo on top of that newspaper. Then I will force myself to eat that poo. It was like hell on earth. I was not supposed to cry, but my brother, I kept on crying and asking myself, what the hell was I doing? And I used to spend a lot of time in the toilet. So what I started doing is that instead of waking up when everyone would have woken up, I started to prefer to wake up somewhere around 4 a.m. when everyone was fast asleep. And my girlfriend, she was someone who really loved sleeping, so she didn't notice as such. She only noticed on the second day that I had gone to the toilet. When she followed me, I told her that I had a running stomach, but she nearly caught me in the act of eating my own poo. So after pouring on top of that newspaper, then I will kneel down, then I will start this painful process of feeding myself with my own poo, and this was quite terrible. It is not something that is easy to do. I wanted to vomit, but I would force myself not to vomit. Always when I would go to perform this ritual, I always had a lemon right next to me. Whenever I felt like vomiting, then I would lick that lemon that I always had by my side. I did this for 3 days. Then on the third day, to my surprise, when I had pooed, when I knelt down to eat that poo again, that was when I saw that this poo had transformed itself. It was now that worm, the worm that was really slow, that was really small, that I used to keep in that bottle that I used to feed with my girlfriend's period blood. This worm, it was now big. Let me say that this worm was now as big as a millipede. I had a voice that told me to pick it up, not to be afraid. I picked it up and I placed it in my pockets, and I returned back to sleep. Later in the day, I didn't go to work because I wanted to go and speak with that Sangoma. I went and I spoke with that Sangoma, who told me that this girl, she was about to get really sick, and he hid the fact that the ritual that I had done by stealing a sanitary pad, it was going to result with her dying. He hid this fact from me, because if he had told me that this girl at the end of the day, she was going to die, no, I was not going to do it. Because this woman, when I started dating her, she told me a painful story, my brother. First of all, she had lost one of her child in a very mysterious way. And the story that she told me, I even suspected that her own father was the one who had murdered her first child, because she told me that her first child, her daughter, had caught his, because she told me that her first child, her daughter, had caught them in the act of making love. It was her and her father. But she had no choice, because her father had started raping her when she was somewhere around 7 years old. So by the time that she was all grown up, her father kept on doing this. After her daughter had caught them in bed, then that was when her daughter mysteriously committed suicide. But what she suspected was that maybe her father was involved, and I also suspected that her father was involved. This story that she told me, I really felt sorry for her, and this had made me to fall in love with her a lot. And I think that this traditional healer took advantage of the way that I loved her physically and spiritually. That was why she was the one that I used for my rituals, since in these rituals they say that you always use someone that is closest to your own heart. My brother, this traditional healer, gave me some money. To my surprise, the money that he gave me, he said, it is the money that you're going to use so that you can go and rent, but I want you to go and rent a house in another province. So what he did is that he took me back to the city. We went to this other company that offer shuttle services. I was taken from that province into another province. I stayed at a lodge, and I stayed at a lodge until I had found accommodation, and then the money started rolling in. What pains me a lot is that the woman that I loved, the woman that I thought that at least me and her, we were going to be together for life because what we shared was really special. It pains me a lot that me and this woman, sometimes we used to walk on foot for about 2 hours, walking from the farms, returning back to the village where she was staying, especially the time when we started dating. I remember that there was this other night when she suddenly called me, and when she told me that she was depressed, she was thinking about all the things that her dad had done to her. So she asked me to come and collect her. This was like 11 p.m. at night. By the time that I walked from the farm, returning back to her village, this was like 2 hours later. And when we returned back to the farm, it was somewhere around 3 a.m. That was how much we loved each other, walking through the bushes. But at the end of the day, I had to sacrifice this woman, the woman who loved me with all of her heart. You should have seen the way that she used to prepare some food for me so that I can go and eat this food when I was at work, because this woman, she was not working permanently at that farm. There were those women that are called Hambahuya who used to be collected by those trucks that collect farm workers. Us as men, we were the ones that used to work at all the times. It pains me a lot, and these memories, my brother, I think that they have triggered a spirit, because for the first time, this was last year, I saw her spirit. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our dear brothers right there. Strange things do happen in this world. And there is another story that I received about our dear brother. I'll just give you a quick narration. The message that he sent to me, it reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? I remember the time when I was still in South Africa. So there was this other woman. This woman, she was working like in the government. And this woman, she approached me one day and she told me that she was facing some challenges there at her workplace. And she wanted one of her workmates to die. This woman, she was a South African woman. So she said, do you know any traditional healers there in your country, in Zim, who can assist me? So I spoke with one that I knew, and I was like the translator, because she could not communicate with this traditional healer. After she had been given some charms, she returned back and she was happy, but she said no, she wanted this man to actually die who was troubling her at work. The thing that she asked me to do, I truly regret, and that is the reason why I had to run away from South Africa, because I was scared, because this woman, the things that she asked me to do, I saw that she was even capable of murdering someone or hiring a hitman to get me killed, since I knew her darkest secret. I am a mechanic, and this woman, she collected me one day and she took me to their offices. She asked me to loosen the brakes as well as the ball joints so that the guy can have a fatal accident. But I want to thank God that this man survived. This woman, when she heard that her co-worker had an accident, to my surprise, she celebrated. And the way that she celebrated, I even got scared and I chose to run away. Dear listeners, right there was just a brief narration of a message that I received. It was sent to me by our dear brothers. Strange things do happen in this world. Do you work like in the government or like in a company whereby there is too much competition? Do you suspect that at your workplace there is some sort of witchcraft? If so, please come to my inbox and share with me your own side of the story.